Yeah, the intention is, yes. Raise your kids up more. Second and fifth. Ready? No, no. Okay, I'd like to call to order the February 13th, 2013 meeting of the Board of Trustees, with the first order of business being public participation.
I don't have any comments.
Okay, seeing none in the room and none on the online. We'll move right on to the architect's presentation on the building feasibility study.
Great. Good evening. Thanks for having us again. Just real quick before I turn it over to Brooke for the presentation, everyone should have received it, the presentation in advance. So hopefully that helps as we go through it. But if you have any questions, just let us know as we go. And Natalie will be joining us shortly. She looks like she joined the wrong session. I'll send her the note. She'll join us in a meeting. But Brooke, if you want to just jump right in.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know that you guys can see it.
We can see it.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Cool. All right, so thank you guys for having us. I'm excited. It's going to be Valentine's Day tomorrow, so the love's going around. And for those of you who watched the Super Bowl, awesome. I did not, my kids would not allow me to watch the Super Bowl. I had to watch some cartoons instead, but I hope it was good. I hope it was a good game. Okay, so with that, we're going to get into the kind of where we're landed at the planning study. We're going to go ahead and talk about one, just setting the objective, the goal of the meeting. We are going to review again the key priorities and purpose that are really driving the overall project. Then we'll take a look at the concept design, and then we'll discuss some next steps. Okay, I am going to put my phone on mute. I apologize. So the goal for today, it's really to confirm that we've accounted for all of the goals that you guys have set forth for the project, what you would hope that is included to make sure that the project is overall a success. And in doing so, help to set up some next steps. And then we'll send you guys a planning study that is an overview of everything that we've gone through in this phase. So as a review, our key priorities. So when we first met, this was the list that you guys had given us on things that you wanted to accomplish. So the first being demolishing the 59 Borthwick house and trying to figure out what the best use of that property would be. You definitely wanted the addition of an auditorium type space that had some flexibility outside of the existing footprint of the library and could host a potential of up to 250 guests. We also wanted to make sure we address the parking. There's a lot of concerns with the community around the distance to the entry and some slip hazards during icy conditions, etc. Which brings me to the next point, removing the ice conditions from the entry points and helping some navigation, especially for handicap access. And then the final two are more about interior, abating the popcorn ceiling. Well, we're going to get rid of the hallway, so there will be no popcorn ceiling. And then addressing the interior fit and finish of the overall library, really looking to give it a more modern look. These were the key priorities that we had established. So you've seen these before. I'm going to read through them one last time. So our objectives are to create a safer exterior environment that's more accommodating to patrons and library activities, has clear vehicle and pedestrian traffic patterns and a more prominent entry, to be considered a port in the storm for our community members and a valued community support partner. So really being there in the event of emergencies, but also to facilitate larger events. Create an easily accessible addition that caters to the library and community program needs and accommodates multifunctional flexible spaces and allows you to increase patron capacity. And then providing adequate space to ensure multiple demographic needs of patrons are accommodated in functional spaces, customized to their intended use and program needs while cohesively integrating efficient employee operational spaces. And then our purpose. So you've seen this once again, this is really our guiding light to make sure that we're really nailing down the objective of this project. I won't read through this just because I know you guys have seen it many times over, but if you have any questions or you want to change it, please just let us know. And then here we go into the design selection. So the last time we met, we landed on this kind of hybrid option between what we were calling at the time split the middle and creating a new front for the building. So in doing so, that created this idea of having the Borthwick property serve as a way of guiding people through the site, making sure that there's access for both drop-off functionality as well as pickup functionality for online orders, and to allow for visibility from the Borthwick side so that you had a more prominent view from the street as you entered into the library space. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to go backwards. I was really backwards. And then the community area, we did go ahead and add that as an addition to the new, creating this idea of a new front with 2 entries that service both sides of the parking spaces. To allow for easier access to the building for both handicap patrons, but also people maybe parking in that far lot for larger events. And then adding a separate entry point specifically for your truck traffic through your maintenance entry and getting that away from the front face of your building. So we took all of the feedback that you guys gave us from the last session and started to refine the design. So we'll go through the site first here. Knowing that the capacity of the parking lot was a major point of consideration, we've gotten the parking spaces up to 168. That includes 8 accessible parking spaces, and those are located across both of the 2 main entry points. There's about 6,000 square feet of outdoor green space or outdoor program area. And that is including a pavilion that would allow for covered concerts or lectures of up to 50 people. And then that would extend out into this kind of gathering plaza space that would allow you to entertain up to 250 people. There's also a secondary green space behind the pavilion that would accommodate an event of around 100 people. Are there any questions regarding this site? So we have a singular entry point. We have 2-way circulation. The exception is the drop-off pickup circle. That will be a 1-way loop so that you don't end up having congestion in that area. And there's
One quick question.
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so I think it's the new service entrance there. Are those all new? That's all new parking back there, right? The far, like that section, right?
Yes.
Those are those are where some of the new parking spaces have come in, correct?
Yeah, so this area back here did not originally exist. So this was an expansion, and this service access road is new as well. And the parking spaces on this side here did not exist either.
Okay.
Can you go over the green space again?
Absolutely. So right now we have a green space in this back area behind the pavilion. This will accommodate around 100 guests for any type of event you wanted to host, maybe on a green area. We
Okay.
then also have a covered pavilion space, so that would allow you to house some equipment. I know you discussed having some audio and visual equipment that you typically will bring out for those events, as well as you can seat up to 50 guests in that pavilion space as well. And then the idea is that you can extend that 50, if it's a larger group, into this more entry plaza gathering space that can be reconfigured for a larger gathering of up to 250 people, using the pavilion as like a stage area, if you will.
Also, something to remember is that these concepts are based on what we heard during the programming discussions. But this is a preliminary concept design, and if comments can be addressed as we move forward with design. So if there's things you want to see refined, or if you'd like to see options explored further as we move forward, we can absolutely do that. It doesn't mean it's set in stone here.
I think after the entire presentation, I want to revisit this in terms of just potential, exactly that, like what potentially could go once we start talking about money and budgets. And, you know, I don't know if we have to have the final discussion tonight, but I think I'd like to know more once we get all the way through. Okay, what about taking that off the table and that list off the table a little bit in just in terms of the price tag? And one other thing, the two-way traffic all around, I'm assuming that that's a safe. I have a little hard time with the previous one with the blue dash lines and all, just understanding that, but I see this. But two-way traffic all the way through, I assume is going to be a safe option.
Yes, yeah. So we had discussed previously that there was confusion with having two separate entry points and having a one-way traffic flow. So this new layout does accommodate two-way traffic across the entire site, which will also be beneficial for this service access road to get in and out. The exception is when you get to this circle, we do want to try to have traffic flow in this direction in order to best facilitate drop-off pickups.
Okay.
So where exactly are the entrances to the building?
So the entry points, the first one is right here and the second one is right here. So the idea, this one lines up directly with the crosswalk from the Borthwick Avenue side and directly to this kind of ADA parking area. And this one lines up to right here.
And on the circle, there's a jut out. Kind of, is that an entry point or is that just a
So
drop-off?
this is actually a covered area. This is housing the book pickup or online order pickup. It doesn't have to be just books.
But it's not an entry, it's just it's a pickup window or whatever, pickup entry. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so before we go off this one a bit, because we were talking about the green space, I'm surprised to see such a large pavilion and so much patio space rather than green space. I thought we had talked about like a park-like area. As far as having the covered pavilion for performances, I think, and Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong or anyone, I thought that we had presentations and things outside because we couldn't fit them inside. But now we're talking about making a large auditorium to fit performances and things like that. So I'm not so sure we would need a covered pavilion.
Oh. We still want to cover something. It doesn't have to be, and we can talk about the surface and all of that stuff, but I know that like that's, you know, people do like events outside. So I think it will be a yes and thing, but we can absolutely talk about what that might be like.
Well, I think that's the value of maybe coming back to this eventually after we've seen everything and just saying, okay, well, for whatever reason, maybe the pavilion, I wrote a couple other things to knock out to ask, say, okay, what about that? And what about, do we really need that once we get through it all the designs? But that was one of the things I also flagged.
Yeah, that is great to know. We actually had the same thought when we were going through the design exercise, seeing like we have this new community space. Will you really be hosting the same size events outside? So in this iteration, we've shown that that's a possibility, but this entire area up to about this point can be dedicated more park-like green space, should that be the direction we want to go in.
Thank you.
No problem. And there will be also, I did want to point out as well, there is new lighting across the site. So you will have new light poles so that the parking area is a bit more safe to traverse in the late hours. I know that that was also a concern that was brought up. Okay, any other questions on site before we head forward? Cool. Okay, so looking at the interior, this is just rotated slightly. I should have rotated the other way, but I apologize for that. So going forward, all of the plans will be oriented in this direction. So this is your pickup circle and your parking area. Your main entries are here and here. And then you'll start to see, I'll have Natalie walk through all the interior programming here in the library. So with that, Natalie, I will hand it over to you. I don't know if you want me to go right on to the next slide or if you wanted to start here.
We can go on to the next slide.
Okay, perfect.
You can just start to click through. Yep. So the blue area is the new community space. And the yellow are the 2 staff areas. And then pink is the maintenance. And orange is the public facing library space. So I'm going to just break out each space and give you a little bit more detail about them. So you can click next. So we have the community space, which where the arrow is, that is the actual room that people gather in. The additional space are either small gathering rooms, some seating areas in the lobby, a place in the lobby to grab coffee. There's a new gang restroom and vestibules into the space, and you'll get a clearer view of the lobby area through the 3D renderings. Next. So this is our first staff area, which is located next to the pickup, the book pickup window. So this will provide space for materials on hold, being ready to be picked up. Kind of, I would picture something like a pharmacy window for this space. And then a few workstations so that we can have people permanently working in this area. We are relocating the elevator with an elevator machine room to this space so that you can still access the mezzanine level. We're keeping the existing stair that was on the exterior of the building so that you can get to the mezzanine level from that point as well, so that you have additional librarian or staff space up there. We're showing the use of your current IT room and a few private offices and a small gathering spaces laid out within the staff area. Now, just remember, this is all preliminary. We're just kind of showing you options for filling out this space, but it would be the next steps for us to figure out how many staff are working in this area, how many private offices versus conference rooms, all those kind of details. So the last part in this area is the checkout counter and a small storage room. So you can go next. That's the pickup window. Now the staff area we have at the back is going to primarily be housed in what is now your community space. We're actually able to reuse this existing space pretty well. So we have an open floor plan with furniture for the tech services department. We could provide acoustics to have some separation for those private phone calls, but also a few small like phone booth type areas so that if you really need quiet, you can still have space to grab a private phone call. There's room for a private office there and some additional meeting space. And we're repurposing the existing kitchenette so that this is a staff kitchenette only. And we've added a staff restroom back here and a mailroom and a counter where you can unpackage all of the boxes. Next to that is the maintenance area. So we have the garage to the service entry. And the reasoning for putting this here next to our staff area is because of that relationship of receiving all of the deliveries. Also in the pink space outside of the garage is a maintenance storage room and the mechanical room. So I'm going to start to walk you through the main library space, starting from the front and working our way towards the back. So we're showing you 2 circulation desks up front, one of them being a larger size in the center. This is where people would be greeted initially, kind of similarly to the setup you have now. And then to the left, we have the children's library, and we have a small station with a circulation desk there. Next. So this is the children's area. In here, we have a small space for play equipment, which is separated by the stacks in the room. And then a small reading zone where Brooke's pointer is. Yep. And some table space so that they can have space for STEM kits and a computer area. Yep. To the right of the computer area is a mother's room. So this is just a private room. Yep, right there. And next to that is another restroom that would be a family style restroom. If you click next, we'll point out the maker space, which is right at the main entrance of the library, just off of the children's space. Next. And working our way further back into the plan, we've provided some space for teens to gather. There could be some monitors here and comfortable furniture, flexible for them to arrange and gather as needed. Next to that, we have, you can click next. Yep, the library of things. This is a lot of open shelving. We could really further design the design in this space to be whatever you'd like, but the location of it is kind of activated by the social zones around it, and that it's located under one of your existing skylights. And click next. So at the bottom, we're showing you the new location for the fiction section. Should also point out that we are reusing the architecture of the existing gang restrooms so that these are your primary restrooms with an ADA restroom for the public inside the library. We have a small circulation desk back here. So we have a total of 3 primary desks on the library floor. So these ones are centered more towards the fiction and nonfiction reading sections. That's the nonfiction section, and we're able to reuse some of the study rooms that are located over here and taking out some of the offices that are currently there and putting the adult lounge or private reading area against those walls with the natural light. Moving towards the center, we have the computer area, which is housed really nicely next to the staff area. So it has this direct relationship still to the IT area in case anybody needs help with the technology there. And there's really good visuals from the primary circulation desk. And then the last zone, I think, is the collaboration zone. Is a lot of flexible furniture and tables throughout the very center of the floor plan, and that's housed on your largest existing skylight. And then around these areas, you'll just see some circles on the plan, which we're identifying as book display. So you could put new books or materials on display around that socialization zone. You want to click next. So overall, we have 15,500 square feet of new addition space. So that's outside of the white dashed lines on the floor plan. Yeah. And overall renovations are 24,800. And to break that up a little bit more, we're showing you the existing square footage of your building in comparison to the new and proposed square footage. Any questions or comments on the floor plan? I know it's a lot to take in, and the furniture, while it is laid out and we're showing you a full plan of walls and everything, keep in mind that it is flexible on the interior to customize it as you see fit.
I have some questions on the quote new children's space, because I think is that the bright orange, the original design you had, it appears as bright orange, I believe. I had a question about that. So that's an addition, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it basically moves and increases the size of the children's space. So in terms of square footage, is that, I assume, bigger than what we currently have, regardless of the addition and where it's located? Is it a bigger children's space than we currently have inside the library?
It is.
I don't know.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't know if you know that, like square footage wise.
Yes, it is slightly larger. I wouldn't say it is. I would say we're ranging from 800 to 1,000 square feet larger, probably the size of like the maker space if it were part of the children's library. But the floor plan didn't change too much in size.
Okay, so by moving the children's space and building a new one, you're repurposing the current children's space into another purpose.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. I have a couple other questions, but I'm going to pass it to my fellow trustees first. All right, the elevator. From my experience, moving an elevator is quite a costly thing. Can you do some of what you're proposing to do without moving and rebuilding an elevator shaft?
And where is it moved to?
Yeah, I don't. As soon as you said move the elevator or relocate the elevator, I was wondering, do you absolutely need to do that?
It's not absolutely necessary. We have to start to look at the views from the main entrance. I think the primary reason for entering it is that falls in the center of the floor plan. So it kind of eliminates a lot of the functionality of the flexibility of that openness that you see when you walk right in.
We also are looking at a new elevator that wouldn't, because it would only be used for staff to get up to the mezzanine, doesn't necessarily need to be a full commercial elevator. So what you have now and it not being in the best condition, providing something that's newer, but of not the same function or use as you currently have it. Sorry, Brooke, go ahead.
It also, that's a good point, Suzanne, because it also eliminates that confusion of, is there more to see upstairs for people that are coming to the library? With it being central on the floor. So this kind of keeps it back of house and the staff know that it's there for their use.
At some point, I'd like to know how much that costs to move an elevator, to close the current elevator and build a new one. I don't know what money, that rough cost on that. And then does this also account, do you take out the, the up at the mezzanine or whatever, that second floor, those stands that are still in there, does this design take those out? Or are they still in place?
Nope, those are still in place, that the floor plan is still existing. So when you look at the 5,900 square feet of staff area, 2,300 of that is the mezzanine. And
Okay.
2,300 of it is in the new 11,400 square feet as well.
Okay,
Yeah, I was just gonna reiterate the intention of moving that elevator stairs so that the public, it's not a public accessible space. So eliminating it from them being able to access it was one reason. And moving it to the new addition, so you'll notice it's outside of the existing footprint, also helps to reduce some of the costs that would be considered impactful with trying to relocate and line up to existing floors. So there's a little bit of leeway in putting it in the new addition versus trying to relocate it within the existing library footprint.
and I'm not sure if you can answer this, but the number of study, the little study rooms that we currently have off to the side, I know they're in high demand. I think that someone wrote us about that. And I know you can dink around a little bit in the final plans, but do you know if we lose or gain any of those little study rooms in this current design? You know what I'm talking about? The ones that are off
ones
on the
that are
side that,
Here.
Yeah, so you didn't lose any of them. The only ones that were removed from the plan are the offices.
okay. So we don't lose any of those spaces, but we don't gain any either, or do we?
You do gain them.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I recall one of our comments being that there was trouble with staff trying to have meeting spaces in addition to the public trying to use the same meeting spaces. So now you're seeing that there's meeting spaces within the staff areas. So the public facing ones will only be used for public use. And there's also additional meeting spaces available in the new community edition as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
That was actually gonna be my next question is, can you talk about where the meeting spaces are and what sizes they are and how many people they accommodate?
Yeah, so Brooke, do you want to start by pointing out the community space ones? I see. Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Well, I have a whole, let's do that one last. How about that?
Sure. Okay, so behind the checkout desk, there's a meeting space. Yep. This one has walls. But you could fit 6 to 8 people probably in that room. If you move to the right slightly, where you see the table of 4. Yep. So those are flexible like tables for staff out on the open floor plan. So if you don't need a private room and you just need a place to gather, those are also a few options. If we go down into the staff area next to the, right over there, there's another, conference room down there. That could probably fit 10 to 12 people. And then, right there, that's another one that's open on the floor plan that could seat 5 or 6.
Okay, those are all staff places. What about public meeting places?
So we maintained the 3 study rooms in the corner. So there's 2 that would fit 1 or 2 people. And then there's another one right at the corner that I think seats 6 or 8 currently. We have a lot of flexible furniture and tables in the center of the floor plan if you don't need a private room. Right now we're showing 1, 2, 4. There's 6 there's 6 tables of 4, and then there's 2 tables of 6, so plenty of large groups there. And then the other space would be the community room or the community edition.
So I will go into the community room.
And sorry, real quick, there's the 2 study nooks and the old nooks that you have. Yep. In the little
Jut,
these right
in the
here.
jut out. Yes, those also. I did put lounge furniture in one of them in case you wanted to just keep it open and have it be a quiet reading zone, but that's something that could be easily changed.
And the refinement of exactly the count or the occupancy of each is something that we can continue to refine and work with with you. So if, this is kind of taking a shot based on what we've heard so far, and we can, have more larger rooms, enclosed rooms, open rooms, those types of things.
So I'm gonna actually backtrack a slide or two here because I want to just bring your attention up to the community space. We'll get into the larger volume in just a moment here, but this area is really designed to be completely flexible. So you've got a lounge seating area here that will accommodate a small group of probably 2 to 4 people. You have another lounge area up here that will do the same, around 2 to 4 people. You have a small private meeting room around here that will do probably about 3 to 4 people. And then you also have an open community meeting room so that you don't have to use your staff meeting room for public events. And that will accommodate around 8 to 10 people. So there's additional space all in this area, in addition to what we're showing in the library. And then fast forward, super speed. Before we get into the specifics of the community room, we do want to give you just a couple of quick precedents. So this one here is looking at the idea of a static stage environment that is open to the exterior. This is something we think would work really nice within the property for the library. The idea of having a room divider was brought up. So we did want to give a visual on what that could look like. So this is a skyfold system. It folds vertically into the ceiling so that you do not have any residual floor space taken up that you would typically see in a gymnasium. So that way it's a much cleaner split of the space. And then this idea of just kind of this interstitial, not really a cafe, but food service environment. And then just some quick imagery around another option for a stage is a hydraulic style stage. So this would be completely flush to the ground and not in use, or it can be elevated when looking at providing a presentation. So this is a way of maximizing the floor space without needing to have a fixed stage environment. And then we wanted to show some imagery around the kind of more refined telescoping seating options. So looking at how these might come to play when both closed and in an open capacity, looking at individual seats that would be upholstered. So with that, I do want to talk through what the capacity of this volume really comes down to. So if you were to do a telescoping seating option, in all cases, we're going to show a fixed stage, but do remember it can be split into a hydraulic stage if preferable. So if you were to just do telescoping seating with a stage, this would be some type of performance style setup. This would accommodate around 240 people. As you look in different configurations, if you truly wanted to max out the volume, you could also do floor seating, and this would accommodate around 310 people. And then if you look at splitting the space, these are just preliminary diagrams just to illustrate how many people you might be able to fit. If you were to do a small lecture style where you're doing just rows of seats, you're around 96 people. Versus if you wanted something for individual instruction where they have tabletop surfaces, maybe they're following along on a presentation for a STEM activity or a cooking demonstration as an example, this would bring you to around 54 people.
I just real quick question before you change, maybe you're getting this. If we wanted to a space that would accommodate 250 or more, we would have to choose, but give you more direction as to, for example, like what you currently have up there, the one on the right looks, that one. If we chose that design, would it restrict the number of people who could be seated there?
So it would depend on if you have the room split. So this is showing you what a max capacity would be if this were to be a closed wall, that skyfold system, if you have.
Okay,
If you left this volume open, you could extend this seating with this maybe tabletop arrangement all the way back here if you prefer. So you'd essentially double what you'd have available. So probably around 110 to 120 people if you were to look at this style of seating.
okay, great, thank you.
And the examples I'm showing you are not all you can do with the space. It's just to give you some preliminary thoughts on how this volume could potentially be utilized. So then once again, at the split space, if you were looking at more of like a group setting environment where you have more group tables and chairs, whether that's kind of more in this 3-person capacity versus a long kind of cafeteria style chair seating arrangement, if you will, this will accommodate around 53 people. And then if you wanted to max out the seating capacity for just putting in standard folding chairs, with more of like a lecture style environment, you'd be around 85 people. And these numbers are approximate. You do want to probably build in some aisles in here to make it easier to navigate, but just showing you very preemptively how many variations that you can set this room up to accommodate a wide variety. And so like your max capacity, should you elect for telescoping seating, in addition to folding chairs, around 310 guests.
And you could, so all of the scenarios that Brooke showed could be utilized in the same space. So if the main decisions are telescoping seating and the skyfold wall, but all of the configurations could be done in the same space. And I believe, Brooke, that's a storage area in the back there for furniture so that you can have these different arrangements. So it's not necessarily pick one, these are all the different configurations you can do with this one space.
Mm-hmm.
The one that you currently have up, that's the one that gives you maximum capacity in terms of numbers, is that correct?
This is maximum capacity in a stage style environment. Now, if you elected for a hydraulic stage, for example, so right now we're showing a fixed stage. That means this is always present. It doesn't go away. You can sit on top of it, what have you. But if you had in a hydraulic stage that was able to go up and down as you needed it, if it was closed, then the rest of this volume would also be accessible for whatever events you might want in. So you could do tables and chairs across the entire space if this was a lift stage versus a static stage. And the benefit, as we talk through, so it's really 3 decisions: the telescoping seating, the skyfold partition, if you want to be able to host 2 completely separate events, and the hydraulic stage are the 3 kind of main components that will drive this space. The other benefit of telescoping seating is, well, you don't have to put out 300 chairs. You push a button. Makes a little.
And while you have this one up, one other question. So I would assume that the hydraulic stage and the skyfold thing would add cost to the project. Is that correct?
Yes, so those would be things that we would budget into the project, and we can look at them as kind of 3 separate entities as we get further along in the project, and make decisions in that realm. I'd say at a minimum, you're probably want to keep that skyfold panel, so you do have the ability to split this space. It seems pretty important, versus having the other kind of hydraulic or telescoping seating.
Thank you.
Brooke, I did wonder, I see a lot of small meeting spaces for 2 or 4, and then a couple for 6 to 8. What about a boardroom? So a meeting space, like right now we have 14 people in this room, and while it's not full, it's getting there. It doesn't seem like you have a medium sized space.
So, did I cut somebody off? I'm sorry if I did. So right now we've made all of the kind of smaller rooms around 6 to 10 people. We didn't have a number to work with, so we can definitely look at expanding one of those conference rooms, whether it's the one that's accessible to the public or if it's one in the staff area, depending on the use. But the other thought is that if you're having a board meeting, you could close off half this space and use the community space in that capacity.
Another,
You know, I think community space is really important for the community, so I think we should probably not have board meetings in that space, but yeah, it's something to think about.
Natalie, were you going to say something?
nope, that's okay.
But certainly moving forward, as we start to get more details into what your needs are, we will be able to adjust the rooms to accommodate that.
We can absolutely reduce the number of smaller rooms to get like a medium-sized room as well.
I definitely think the concept of if you're gonna have a space that's as large as that, being able to divide it seems very important to me. Because we certainly have big events and some members of the community have big events, but more often we have.
Oh, you can have two things going on.
Yeah, I mean, and two like table seating for 50 at tables, that's the size of the community, that's the max size of our community room right now. So if we had about 50 people at tables, so what you're getting is 2 spaces that are as large as the community room right now.
Yeah.
So
I think maximum flexibility is gonna be important, because I think part of it is, the discussion is having a space where you can fit 250. A bigger community space, and then also something that can be adjusted so that you can have 50 people room, that's kind of thing, depending on what the needs are.
Great.
Yeah, and another great note about that skyfold system is it is also acoustically sound. So you could have a concert on one side and I don't know, a book reading on the other side, and they wouldn't be able to interfere with one another.
Nice.
Okay, so another thing I want to point out before we get to the renderings is this fixed stage area allows for a really nice opportunity to engage with the site. So we have created an elevated patio space. So should your activities that are happening in the community center want to venture outdoors for any particular purpose, that is also an opportunity. So I'm going to head into the renderings. Ahead of doing that, I just want to give you a little reminder of what your current entry looks like to the building. So this is from Delaware Avenue. This is a perspective that currently wouldn't change. So it'd be kind of like the historical footprint of what the library feels like today. And then on the opposite side, this is where you're starting to see a pretty big difference in the entry. Wait, that's still Delaware, pardon me, Borthwick. So on the Borthwick side of the property, this is your current, what you see when you enter the library. You have the 2 entry points, and you really just can't see the library. There's also this existing house. This is where the 59 Borthwick house is, as well, just for heads up. And I know some of the context around the current building was that the facade felt a little dated. It feels very solid. No, buddy. No, can you go ask mom? Sorry about that. And then sorry, that just totally threw me off. So we're looking at really updating the exterior, making it really more modernized and refreshed and visible really to the public. So this is your view as you're coming down Borthwick. This is where the 59 Borthwick house used to be located. This is, I think it's a law building or tax guy, something like that. So
Yeah,
that's,
the account, yeah.
yeah, the accountant. So that's that property line there. As you progress down Borthwick, you're brought to this main entry here. So now there's a singular entry point. We've relocated the signage from this original side, where it was next to the fence line, over to this side to service both entry directions.
We
No,
need to buy more batteries.
yeah, not right now, please. Not right now.
But I
Sorry.
need batteries.
The batteries.
We like kids.
Sorry, that's my son. Everything's running out of batteries all the time, Kelly. Okay, so this is your main perspective as you look into the building. This is the first primary entry point. So this is where your drop-off circle would be. This is that elevated patio right outside of the community space. So you're greeted with whatever's happening in that main community volume. You can see it as you enter the building. Then we have this nice large canopy that extends all the way through the vestibule. On the opposite side, this volume right here is your new children's library. So it's going to be super prominent as people are entering the building to see what's going on. There's usually story time or kids playing. It's generally a very fun place to have as a front to your building. And then on this corner right here, as you enter, you'll see the makerspace and any activities happening in that volume as well. And then as you look towards the pavilion and towards the green space, this is showing just preliminary concepts of how this space may be utilized. You can have tables and chairs for reading. You can have some garden areas. This, as we were talking earlier, could be all green space versus being a paved area as well. And then from the interior, well, actually, before I move to the interior, are there any questions regarding the exterior?
Brooke, if I may add, sorry.
So does this shorten the distance? Because that was one of the things I couldn't tell. By what amount does it shorten the distance between a parking space and the walking into the door, and then from the door, then there's the interior part up to the getting into the library? That's one of the main things. Is it was hard for me to tell. It looks like it's a little bit shorter, but I'm not sure how much shorter.
Yeah, so the walk from the parking to the entry is much shorter than the original walk down that very long patio. I don't remember the exact distance, but from your car to the door on either side, for at least for the ADA parking, you're around 15 feet.
And even the other side too, because the other side looks a little bit longer.
So the other side is a bit longer, but it is still not anywhere near where you guys had previous. And the nice part about this entry, so this entry is going to give you the closest access to the main library. The other entry is going to give you the closest access to the community center.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can you just tell us relocated the transformer to?
What was that? I didn't hear it.
The transformer that's kind of right outside our right now?
Yes, so hold on 1 minute. I gotta back up. Reverse. So if I go back to the site plan real quick. So your current transformer, so previously your entry point was down here. This is where the main building is. So that kind of gives you a little bit. This is your new entry. This was your previous entry. This is where the new transformer would be relocated. So that way it maintains access from the service road for any trucks that would need to service it. And then it would connect down to Delaware Avenue.
Thank you.
Forwarding, Suzanne.
I just wanted to comment that from an architectural language standpoint, this is a preliminary design concept that we felt complemented the existing building while elevating the from some of the very minimal comments we've received so far. But as we move forward in design, the intent would be to vet that, gather additional ideas, and provide options if for some reason, if this is not desired, if you have comments about this, to refine that further. So again, preliminary concept, if there are things that we can refine later, that is part of the next stage of design process.
Perfect. Yes. We're really looking at, we've got this warm wood tone happening to really be more inviting and really be accentuated in its contrasting material. And this material could be 2 different wood tones, or it could be completely different paneling or stone material, anything that offers contrast to the nice warm feeling that you get as you enter through the space. So with that, I will take you through the interior. So previously, this was your entry experience. You went down a long corridor that was very solid. So no transparency within this space, made it very difficult to navigate. I know you mentioned earlier that a lot of patrons would get lost trying to find the community room, which you just had to point them back outside the door. And then also having your restrooms being kind of the primary thing you see when you enter. So with that, looking at this new entry experience, bringing the wood in from the exterior to continue that and have a focal point. This long wall right here you're seeing is your access to the main library space. So from the drop-off circle pickup, you're having immediate access into the community space. We're showing it here as divided with that skyfold panel. And then you'll have lots of opportunity for soft seating or cafe style seating, anything that's mobile and flexible, because you can once again have this space be utilized for things like book sales, or maybe you want to do a art gallery throughout the entire space, or maybe you want to host a STEM night for the school and use that space as kind of a science. I keep thinking of like those 3 posters that you used to do in elementary school or something like that. So making this completely flexible. And then from the opposite entry, you'll see you have a small, it's not a cafe, I'd say it's more of like a food prep area where you could serve coffee or light snacks, or have it service the events that are happening in the community space. Maybe you have a mobile gallery that becomes present. There's opportunity to do things like, I'm calling this my Girl Scout cookie table, even though there's no cookies. But for the members of the community to leverage this lobby area to engage with patrons, you've got small nooks in both this area and in the front area as well, and complete visibility into the library. So from both entry points, it's very clear where the access to the library is and where the access to the community room space is, and visibility across both of those venues. And this is the site's kind of overall. So you can see how we're trying to tie into the existing brick and flow into the new kind of modern exterior. So before we go any further, any questions or comments around the interior or exterior? No?
I think so.
No.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Suzanne just to talk to you about some preliminary budgets here.
Thanks, Brooke.
Mhm.
So again, based on the concept that you've seen, we've developed a rough order of magnitude cost. As we've kind of discussed with as we were preparing for this project was that as we go further into design, we can get more nuanced with knowing exactly what different parts and pieces cost. So that's where we can start making decisions on reducing square footage, or not doing the elevator, or modifying certain design elements in terms of cost, and comparing that to the value for you and your community. But based on what you see now, the rough order of magnitude cost, you see the kind of the breakdown. So there's the site cost, and that's a lump sum estimate. The new construction cost is a per square foot cost that equals out to the total that you see. And then the renovation cost, the reason that those are delineated differently is that within the new construction, costs are obviously a little higher, but we do have looked at that in terms of the type of space that it is. So for instance, a maintenance space, that's the addition there, is much less of a cost than the community space, for instance. And then the renovations, primarily that's within the main library space. Then there's a couple of miscellaneous items that, again, we've lump summed estimated around the demolition of the house, the hazardous material abatement, and then some miscellaneous building envelope improvements. That's a lot about how we're tying the new construction to the existing construction, or verifying the masonry, and modifying windows or the roof and the windows and things like that as we tie the new construction together. So that gives you a total construction cost. So the construction cost is hard costs of about that 16.5 million. And again, this is if you were to do it all at once. So at one point we were looking at kind of doing phases. That is definitely something we can look at doing as well. But as part of this study, we were asked to look at doing everything as if it were done all at once. Then we've calculated a cost for FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So that would be the furniture, the book stacks, AV, IT elements, things like that. So you see a budget cost there of 1.7. And then there's the soft costs. So this would be fees, construction management costs, the additional testing if needed for anything related to the site, or additional asbestos or hazmat testing, things like that go into that, as well as escalation, which is usually calculated to about midpoint of construction. So if we were to move forward right away, we can estimate that to be in about 1.5 to 2 years from now. If for some reason we decide to go at with different phases, or to do things in a different timeline than that, escalation costs would change accordingly. So based on, again, doing everything at once and moving forward right away, essentially, that would be a total project cost, rough order of magnitude of around 23 million. And as I say all of that, I know that is obviously more than the original cost if you were to calculate everything together from your master plan, which was around 17 million. A couple of differences. One is the inflation and escalation costs. Everything that's happened in the last couple of years has had a big impact on construction costs. Also, that the total addition scope is more square footage wise, as shown here. So as we look at proceeding with this, one of the things to work with you on is it all at once? Is it parts and pieces of this? And if so, what's the proper sequencing? And some of those responses might not be known until we go. Sometimes what we can do is to proceed into schematic design for the full design, and get a cost estimate for all of the elements within that, and start making recommendations for how you might pare some things down. Oh, sorry. Pare some things down, or sequence things to in a manner that works for you and for the funding structures. Are there any questions around this?
Assume these costs include landscaping and the parking lot? Where
Yes.
is that?
That's the
What
top. The top line that says site, the lump sum.
Oh,
of
site, I'm
41.
sorry.
And Karen, so the new construction is the children's library and the community room, basically. Correct, then. Those two rooms primarily.
A little bit of the maintenance area as well. If we went back to the footprint that shows the dotted line, a little bit where the book pickup is as well.
Sure, yeah, that whole, like, that, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be this space here, this whole volume, and the children's and maintenance area.
So if we want to look at reducing square footage there, that's totally something that we can investigate. Moving into design.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if we're, if we're, so that, you know, it'd be an interesting thing to sell to the community. If, for example, we were looking to knock the number down. Could you, what's the process? Do we start asking us what part of that square footage design do you want knocked out? Or is it more projects that you can say, for example, like the transformer thingamajiggy? I mean, does that have to move? Do you have to move the elevator? I mean, how do you go about if we were interested in exploring options? So this is option one. If there were option 2 and 3 that were cost less than that, how do we get, how, generally speaking, from your experience, how do you work with us to get option 2 and 3? Like, what direction do you give us into, or in terms of getting to option 2 and 3?
So there's two different ways to look at that. One is to proceed with the design as shown into getting more detail. So more cost information, more systems construction detail, more programmatic detail to understand specifically. Again, you know, Natalie kind of walked you through the plan, and that's based on the preliminary programming meetings we've had, but we haven't gone through sufficient detail to know for sure, is that exactly the right square footage for each space type, and then is that the right quantity of each space type, and that sort of thing. So we could proceed and just continue to develop more detail, and then that detail informs a more thorough cost estimate by a professional cost estimator, and that's when we can then look at looking at the value of each item per the cost. So knowing that within the spatial requirements, these are your priorities, but maybe these are more on the wish list, and we can start looking at that and have a defined cost for each of those items. So that's one way. The other way, and with that way, there are options. So we can develop alternates, we can develop recommendations and different options to lay out those different parts and pieces. The other way to proceed is if you are rethinking this design and want to go a different direction, that could be a redesign in terms of other options where it's going ahead and reducing a lot of scope without that additional information. I would recommend the first option because that's where we can really make better informed decisions and help make recommendations for you with that are more informed. But those are the two options in how to proceed. And also, the more information we get, the better we can be about specifically saying, yes, you have to do this versus you could do this, could not do this, or no, let's not do that. And then the pros and cons of each. So assigning the value of moving the elevator cost-wise versus what does that gain you functionally. So it's an iterative process between all of the stakeholders and the cost estimator and the design team to work through all of the different scenarios with you during that initial schematic design phase.
Thank you. I like the first option you laid out. It sounds like there's a lot of flexibility. You're going to be giving us alternates. We can ask for alternates like the elevator or the children's. But so as long as there's flexibility and there's give and take, and there's options to say, well, this option will cost this, but this option will cost that because you've given us, I feel comfortable doing that. I don't know where other people are.
Yes, exactly.
So Suzanne, should I just contact you if we're gonna talk about moving forward with a proposal for schematic design? Is that be
Yes.
your, am I jumping ahead?
I'd be interested
next
to hear
steps?
what other people think about other trustees. I don't know. If you have a thought. Anyone has other thoughts?
Yeah, okay, I mean, just, so we'll just go, does anyone have any other thoughts to the proposal and or the discussion after the proposal? I can go first. I totally agree on the first option. And I think these are aspirational costs, because talking about something that's gonna be built over the next 3 or 4 years, so some of this is the best guess. So that's the only thing we can do. But yeah, I think the iteration or the going forward with this, I wouldn't want to do another option. Any other thoughts?
I agree. Yeah, me too. I am wondering though, when Mark was talking about best guess, I mean, that's why we have these escalation costs built in, is that correct? To try and mitigate increases in interest rates and construction costs, that sort of thing.
Right, to a point. So we try to estimate escalation to the midpoint of construction, which again is kind of, we were basing this on, we were gonna keep going with the full phase immediately, anticipating that midpoint of construction would be, 1.5 to 2 years from now. If as that changes, that midpoint moves out and that escalation continues to rise. So it's accounting for a large piece of that, but we don't want to over accommodate that and say 6 years from now, because then that number would be a lot higher. So if we define a more specific schedule, we can pinpoint that time period more accurately. And if the scope changes, that will also impact schedule, and that can also help us to better pinpoint that midpoint of construction.
And correct me if I'm wrong, let's say there's a bond that goes out to the public, it gets voted, it gets approved for X amount of money. If during the time that bond is approved and state ed is reviewing everything, if the cost of this like whatever project that bond was built off of, escalates beyond the amount of the bond that was accepted or voted by the public, then the board comes back and starts working with you as saying what goes out, because we have X amount of money that was approved, correct? Is that
Correct? Yep.
Okay.
So once it's approved, that's what we stick within in any way possible. And so we try to do our best so that you don't run into that occurrence, that you do end up over. So that would be not desirable, and we will work very hard to make sure that doesn't happen.
great? But that would be the process. So the flexibility continues after a bond, should it be voted and approved, continues as we deal with real time costs and prices and escalation.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Okay, so
Yeah, thanks.
is it,
I have one other question, or one other comment, I'm sorry. Having been on the school board, I am extremely aware of the idea of constructing things that are also safe, given our current social environment. And I have to admit, when I saw so much glass, it made me think of that. How much is visible from someone outside or someone coming in to do harm? It's a reality of our, I know it was discussed on the school board. So it's just something to be mindful of, both for us and for you. I don't know if at some point we bring in someone from a security perspective to look, because when you see this much glass and this much visibility, it's great for the public, but it's not great for other things.
I just want to say I had the same thought.
Yeah,
It's not necessarily the glass, obviously a good point, but several years ago, we did an active shooter drill. And we talked about the idea that when this, we
You
were
walk in, you see everybody.
yeah, when we were conceptually thinking about this, and I remember at the time that we said, any new design would likely be designed to dissuade an active shooter. And I think that thought has largely been displaced by design to accommodate a COVID world. And now sometimes we need to think about both bad things as part of the design. So I think that's a good.
It'd be interesting for you to, maybe if someone, you could reach out to the district. And just ask what process because I assume they use a process, I know they do. And they're right now, I think have passed a bond, they're working within that bond, that's why I knew about if the public approves this amount and the cost does no longer covers the amount of the project, that's why I know that. They're going through that process. I would ask them, who, if anyone, do they bring in to just advise? It doesn't mean we can't do all the glass and school and all the rest, but I, as I said, I'm aware that you see everybody. And, yeah, there you go. So would that be helpful? It would be helpful for me to know just what do they do when they're because they do bonds much more frequently than we do, and what's their process?
I think too that would be good to know. I do think that the glass brings in the natural light, and that was a huge factor in public input when we were originally discussing the project. So without glass, you're not having much natural light.
Or maybe we don't need quite as much, but I'd be interested in pursuing that from a security perspective. What are we doing?
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And we can look at, what is that right balance? So what are the pros and cons of the glass, of the sort of building circulation and orientation, from a, for instance, active shooter scenario? There are consultants that I'm sure we can work with some of our school districts to identify that help run those scenarios and kind of provide an assessment. There's also, Ash McGraw has somebody on staff who is kind of an expert in terms of architecture and thinking about materiality and things like that can be used. So there's absolutely something to consider, and we can mine our network to provide those recommendations.
So Suzanne, as far as next steps, are we there or?
Yeah, so our next study or our next steps are to provide you the official deliverable of this. So it's essentially the presentation you've seen plus a little bit of backup information, and to close out that phase unless anybody objects. And then to have conversations with you on proceeding with the next design phases and updating our proposal.
Great.
Yeah, we're good.
Sounds like where we are.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Very much appreciate creativity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the meeting agenda here. The next item on the agenda is the review previous meeting minutes. Pages 2 through 7. We can just take a quick look at those.
Yeah, probably I do. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes on pages 2 through 7.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. See no opposition, that motion carries. Moving right into the financial report, pages 9 through 16.
Regarding the revenue and expense report, on the revenue side, we've received 98% of budgeted tax revenues from the school district and expect to receive the remaining portion in April. Interest income is just under 33,000. And we've received another $1,500 in contributions, 1,000 of which is a match from the Friends to the storage contribution that we received last month. Expenses are tracking about 4.7% under budget, which is very close to where we were last year at this time. I do want to note that the certificate of deposit that we had a 3-month CD for $500,000 matured on February 7th. That's after this report. This report goes through January, but I just wanted to mention it to you. We decided to renew it for a 4-month CD, which takes us pretty much to the end of the fiscal year. And the rate is 4.62%. We earned just over $5,000 in interest on the 3-month $500,000 CD, and that was rolled over into the new CD. So, and we're going to earn interest on interest. I don't know if you want to look at the report and if you have any questions about income and expenses and.
Well, I noticed the interest is like the 33,000. I think we're doing very well, and mostly I think because of some of the leadership of the financial committee and you, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. I mean, the rates, you know, are much, much better than obviously we projected, because, you know, nobody has a magic crystal ball. We have no idea what the rates are going to be. It's hard to budget even for next year. It's hard to know, but we do want to take advantage of what we can when, you know, it's out there. And Tanya and I have been working pretty closely together to manage the funds, because we don't want to lock up too much, but we want to lock up as much as we can so we can take advantage of the rates. And that's been working out really.
I had one question on the charts that come later, that it looked like the state aid, we're up at 93% of getting the state aid, I believe. I wasn't sure if when we get the rest of it.
It'll come in from this,
In the spring sometime.
well, as we approach the end of the state's fiscal year,
Okay,
they'll cut the check to Upper Hudson, and then who gives us the final 10%.
okay, so that last, okay. I had just noticed that. I wasn't sure what the process was to get the rest of it.
Any questions on the revenues or expenses, the detail?
I also wanted to mention, just remind you about the fund balance that we have, which stands at 4.1 million right now. And of that amount, we need to set aside about 1.3 million to fund operations for the first quarter of the year until we start receiving tax revenues. So the fund balance has been growing over the last several years, but I mean, we're in good financial shape, and you know, we have a little bit of money in the bank to pay for a few things on this project if we move forward.
Remind me if we did
Maybe some
this.
legal fees, I don't know.
Have we taken part of that fund balance and transferred it into like the building fund before? Or did I make that up? No, okay.
No.
Okay, thank you.
That's something like school districts would be more.
No,
likely
the
to do
district does that, but I thought we had done some amount had gone like,
We moved $50,000.
yeah, we moved. I knew it had.
But it's not really fund balance.
Yeah, okay.
We set aside $50,000 from our operating fund
Maybe that was
in
it.
the building fund so that we could track all of the.
Got
building
it, that's what it is. I knew we had to
expenses.
have 5 in there and I knew we had done
Yep.
something. Thank you.
And it's likely to be more if we engage for schematic design,
Yeah,
Right,
that
right,
there's more.
right.
got it. Thought we had done something and that was it. Thank you.
It's just a good way to manage all of the expenses related to this project.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Wow. Okay, I need a motion on the financial report.
I move we accept the financial report.
Second that.
Thanks. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Seeing opposition, that motion carries. Okay. Thanks, Sherry.
Give me a second. I'm
I
gonna
know.
work it. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, now we'll go to the personnel report.
Thanks, Marky. So for the first time in several months, I have no actions requested of you. So I have not requested to fill any positions. However, I'm pleased to report that we filled 3 on here and 4, Tracy, as of Friday evening after the publishing of this. So we have filled this full-time library assistant in the Public Services Department. We have filled this full-time librarian 1 in the where's the other one? We have 2 full-time librarian 1s. We filled this position, which I did ask either as a library assistant or as a librarian. We filled this position as a librarian, and then we filled our part-time clerical position. So 3 officially on this, and then 1 other full-time. So that's good that we will be approaching actual full staff for the first time. So that's nice. You know, we were, but that was a good process. So we're excited for those folks to get started.
So with the filling of those positions, what will the public see?
They're going to see more people to provide service at the information desk, the children's desk, more people do programs, more ability for us to provide outreach, which now we do as we can, but the ability to do outreach more reliably, have enough people to be able to do that. So these are direct service public services.
Great, thank you.
So just something to note, not even anything to vote on. So there you go.
Okay, so any questions? Okay, director's report.
All right, got a lot to go through. I'll be as fast as I can. All right. So we're talking about the plaza later. We can jump all that stuff. Yes,
Wait,
go ahead.
sorry, you're going right by it. So you said that you had conversations with Ashley McGraw about the icing.
Yes.
So did they say that they could possibly do something in the interim or?
Do you want to talk about that now, or we want to
Oh,
go
I'm
under?
sorry, I thought that's what that paragraph was for.
It's just to put info in the report, and we got it down below.
Okay.
So that it doesn't matter. We can talk. There's nothing to do necessarily, but
We can just wait till it's on the way, sorry.
it's on the way. So just overall, I'd like to report that this is the first month where I can say things are beginning to feel anything like pre-COVID normal. The statistics on that will bear me out as we'll get down to the statistical report. But we're starting to have things like the Bethlehem Historical Association had a literally standing only presentation. So we are back, and I got my first complaints about the fact that I couldn't get into the room I haven't had a complaint about not being able to get into a program in 3 years. So I didn't get very long of a honeymoon period between we don't want to come in for programs to now there's not enough room for programs. So it just felt like 2018. That's we get yelled at for that for a little bit. So but we were excited to see that program was so well attended. During the Regents Week, we had study hall at the library again. The studying in the library is starting to look like what we think it looks like pre-pandemic. We did our study hall, and well, maybe not all the way to 2017 or 2018. It looked, it was quite heavily used. That was great. Yeah, we'll get more collisions in the meeting rooms as people return and want to use the meeting rooms. More groups want to come back. We're getting requests for more new groups who haven't used our meeting spaces or haven't used our meeting spaces in multiple years. More requests for hybrid meetings in this room, and like sort of this hybrid meeting works actually quite well. We can have a hybrid meeting in the community room. A hybrid meeting is kind of a nightmare. And if you have a larger room, remember the setup we used to have for our board meetings in there, pretty difficult to get going, but it's different because the room is the size that it is, and acoustically it's a challenge. So just what people are asking for is a little bit different. So
I just have a really quick comment on
Yes.
the collections in the children's place and
Yep.
creating more space. I did think it was just interesting, the architect's presentation tonight. It seemed like the children's place was essentially the same size. And
Yeah,
I
just
thought the children's place was kind of a big thing for us, and we were gonna
It
make
is.
something larger.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things where we've got we have almost one half of a dialogue. We've got their dialogue, they listen to us, they've come back with a response, and now it's time for us to have this dialogue back and forth where we say, yeah, I hear you, that's great,
Okay.
but I don't need so much of that, and maybe I need some more of this, and we have to start talking to them about those things where our sort of refinements of that happen. You're right on it, right? Yeah, where's the play space? Where's the,
Yeah.
the people who tell me, get rid of all those picture books and give me more toys. I'm not doing that, but that is a sentiment that has been expressed to me. So I understand that there's desire for more, all of that. Anyway, 3 VHS to DVD converter, people love to use that, which is great. And then we're getting more demand for one-on-one in-depth technology help. This has been an increasing part of our business over the past decade, but now really there are a bunch of people who have been left on the side of the road of the technology train, and they come to us and say, you know, like, I need help resetting a lot of passwords. Like, we're doing a lot of that in-depth technology help, and now we're getting to the point where it's a little bit less like, sit down with me at the desk, and maybe more like we need to schedule a half an hour or 45 minutes for us to work with you and work through some of these things. So that's coming back. And the Friends of the Library bus trip to Boston, they ran those years ago. 12 years, 15 years ago, we ran some of those, and they were always the slowest to fill up. They used to try to go to the flower show. In any case, this one sold out very quickly, which is another indicator to me of people wanting to move around, people want to go and travel. So that's a very popular thing. Lots of great programs, which I'm not going to read through, but good story times. Let's talk about Libby. Awesome candles with macrame is back again, just like the 70s. Fantastic.
Marshmallows.
Yeah. So Marshmallow Bridge. So this is some of the outreach we're talking about. Like, we've had a couple reach out from people where we do. I mean, Christine has been doing she's our outreach person. So she's been at every fall festival and Five Rivers thing, and it was you and me at first night. So some of the to increase our ability to do outreach is one of the things we have had an impacted ability to do. Next 5 weeks, things are going to get better. Lots of upcoming programs. I just want to mention we're working with Pat Fahey. There's a book of her son's photographs. We're talking about having her come in and do a book. Not a book talk necessarily, but a book presentation. Here, I know that would be popular with folks. Some evening on the green. So we're talking about those outside programs. Summer reading, evening on the green. That's all in progress right now. And then as is our increasing and ever strengthening ties with Parks and Recreation, and more programming. And that's really this 4-part partnership between Parks and Recreation, the Friends of the Town, Parks and Recreation, the library, so that all of this collaborating together. Some of those programs, and they're huge, right? So some of the programs are so well worth putting our time into. So we know during February break, the aquarium, like, that's the one I'm afraid of. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. We're doing 2 sessions, so we're doing a pre-K through grade 2, and then grades 3 and up. But everybody loves starfish, so it's owls and starfish and crows and hawks and that stuff. So that's going to be popular. If you want to take a picture of a lot of people, a lot of kids in the library, there you go. That's a good day. This Bethlehem Historical Association, we know that Jack McEnany is going to come in and talk about the Irish in Albany. We're going to blow that door out too. Yeah. Again, if you hear from somebody who says they can't get in, we announce this stuff in the footnotes. Patrons. And then I got a lot of comments from people who live outside the district that they couldn't get in. Really, I have some sympathy. I wish I could get everybody in, but in the end, I know who pays our salaries.
I did look once I read this, and because I wanted to sign up.
Yeah.
Is it not up yet?
Might just be open today. Just open today.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because I looked everywhere.
So go get in there. It's just today, right? So so just some downsizing, and then we're gonna have you'll have an offer. As far as circulation is concerned, we have a bunch of patrons. We just to let you know, we're doing some automatic renewals to like reduce the hassle of people who are actively using their cards. We're not going to make them expire. We just automatically their expiration date out to 2026. And just I put a note in here. It's not a brag. It's a little bit of a brag. We have 21,000 people signed up for cards, of which 10,000 are active. So that's a really good percentage for a library. You know, you don't have any other benchmark, but I can tell you that's not most libraries of their experiences. So it's just nice. That's just a sign of communities in the library. And Mark requested, he saw somewhere online that we put a value calculator on. So we put just not for a total for the year, but at the bottom of the receipts, that's rolling, right? Yeah. So at the bottom of the receipt, it just totals up the retail cost of the items that you checked out and just says, hey, by the way, today you saved yourself how much?
Super cool. $29.
$29. So there you go. So that's a good idea. Yeah, well, and we thought this way was a good implementation because it talks about like what you're checking out today, not necessarily creepily looking back at everything that you checked out for the whole year and said, this is tracking everything.
It's
So,
also the replacement.
That's what it is.
so, if you check out a Wi-Fi, yeah, if you check out a Wi-Fi hotspot,
So.
yeah, right. If you check out a Wi-Fi hotspot, maybe it's good to know how much money that is. Okay, so in here, I've included, this is the annual report circulation. So we're putting together our annual report to the state right now. These graphs, it's just really good to show you like here's 2016, 2017, 2018, through pandemic years. Bang, bang. And then here is the year ending June last year, right? So June 2022. That's where that ends. We obviously don't have a full year yet, which I'm expecting to be even higher than this orange bar. But just, I keep talking about physical circulation, returning to more normal pre-pandemic levels. We're here. And we're not even looking at e-content circulation here. These are just checkouts of stuff across the desk. So it's nice when I see the statistics that reiterate to me when I say, oh, we're busier, more stuff being checked in and out. It's nice for me to have statistics to say, yes, what I'm seeing and observing by the number of cards, the number of people, how busy we are in the library isn't just Jeff having a delusion. It's a genuine backed up by data. So, and then, we have data, obviously we have all our data current, but I don't have it here to show you. So that
What's other?
there's a lot of other, these are state definitions. So, what is other? It's every library thing, and
things, it's electronic materials, and we fall into a classic category.
Okay.
other, yeah. So,
We won't break it.
no, I'll break it down for you all you want. We have our own statistics. I can be a lot more descriptive. These are just straight from the state. We're just doing the annual report right now, and it seemed Phil put this together.
Sure.
I thought it was a good representative, just of generally speaking, what's going on in the library. So,
Don't they break down the electronic check? They're just behind on that? That's
Should wanna know
that's
that.
a.
yeah, no, we have it on there. It's just not on this report. We have it there. They don't categorize those. There's a little bit of a fight going on right now about something like a subscription. When we have something like Hoopla, what's the size of that collection? Do we count every item that is potentially ever checked out? Or like in the Overdrive magazines, there's 3,000 or 4,000 different magazines, most of which no one ever checks out a single issue. Do we own it? Count it as ownership? The state's arguing literally about this. So there's some kind of these categorization of things, like with Overdrive, typically books, we license it. We don't own it, but we license. You could say the library has one of these. Hoopla, as many people who want to approach it and check something out have it. So how much, what's owned? It's just so that they're defining and looking at some of those categories. It's a trouble. They're working on it. It changes a lot. Met with Assemblyman Bendet, who's our new library assembly representative. I just wanted to talk about library services. The nice thing was I was going to, because most of the libraries he represents are the smaller libraries, the non-East Greenbush, not Troy libraries.
All Bristol County, right?
Minus Troy and East Greenbush, plus a little bit of Washington County, like Cambridge, and then down the, not quite Kinderhook, but down into Columbia County a little bit. So I was going to talk about the library. Turns out he lived on Kenwood Avenue. So he was here with his kids all the time, knows all about the library. He's like, yeah, I know how you work. So just a chance to talk.
Speaking of that, we do have an advocacy coming up.
Yep, I'm gonna send that. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Michelle's
Thanks.
asking about the schedule.
Okay, God, thank you. It's on my notes. Like,
I have some math.
okay, good.
You have it. Do you have the schedule for our two meetings?
So,
It's one at 9 and one at.
but I just knew we were talking about the politicians, so.
It's the first and the last meeting of the day.
3:30.
3:30 and what?
9.
9:15 and 3:30. All right. So we have Neil Breslin's office and Scott. So I did that. Just really quickly, I put the thank you note from the Living Resources in there. I'd just like to mention all of these other sort of internships and supported employment opportunities that the library provides. And every once in a while, these are other partnerships. This was the first one that we had in the IT department. This intern was part of the St. Rose program, combination of St. Rose and Living Resources. And so we had him here from September to just now. So anyway, it was a great experience. We met with folks from the Bethlehem Historical Association, and here's the part where it impacts the building. They said, great, we'll continue this. And they did ask us if the board would consider a rare books room or historical records storage room in the library. Said that I would mention it, and I have. So there we are. Some libraries include these. There isn't, and it just
What a great idea.
New business.
yeah, well, I'm not, no, we don't have to deal with that today. I'm just saying the between town hall and the diciness of the storage at the Historical Society at the Red Schoolhouse. Not that there's not a need for this, it's whose job is it to provide it? I'll leave that, that's a political question. Good luck. We have a copy, a copy of our updated pocket disaster plan, went over to town emergency management office. We have a lot of new staff people, new department head. So it's important that they have, I mean, police definitely have my phone number, but they need our contact information in case something weird happens. So that got sent over there to Jack Brennan. And then contract negotiations, we'll be talking a lot about that. And then UHLS has some notary classes, which again, we'll talk under this. Resources, great. Just want to bring up stats. I'm not going to talk about circulation this time. I usually do. Circulation's up, right? Still an 8% increase in circulation. That's great. Some slight decreases in electronic circulation. So actually we're up over last year with some decreases in electronic circulation. That means even greater increases in physical circulation. That's so if we're up 8%, down a little bit in electronic, that's only because we're up in physical circulation. So that's good and interesting to know. But here's the statistics that I want to point out about libraries. So public use of the meeting rooms up over 100% over last year. Public meeting attendance up over 232%. So not only are there more meetings, but more heavily attended by. We had a lot more staff use in library programs, and then study room sessions up 112% over last year. So those are those things where I can say, oh, great. Last year we only had one tech room. The tech room was open. The makerspace was open, only got used once. This year it got used 10 times. Our door count was up 42%, right? So that's it's a significant increase. We're still not back in full pre-pandemic where I expect the door count to be, but we're getting much closer than we've been recently. So circulation came back, roaring back maybe last year this time, and now the physical use of the building is returning. That's what those statistics mean. More registered borrowers, a really high number of registered borrowers this month, 125. And again, it described me on the weekend, there were 3 stations at the checkout desk. There were 3 families all getting cards for the whole family. So these are just people who are returning to using the physical space at the library. So we like to see all that stuff. Computer signups again up 42%. That's approaching. Decreases, increases obviously always in the audiobook. We labor the death of CD audiobooks. Nothing we can do about that. And then, again, just a corresponding increase in our wireless use. Again, 40% increase. That's just a really good benchmark of how many people are here doing something. There we go. Monthly report. Okay.
Just wondering how you count that wireless use.
Oh, we have our wireless management software tracks connections and sessions. So. Yeah, part of that for the state.
Any questions? Okay.
As Jess said, Advocacy Day is the 28th. In person.
It's in person, you said?
It is in person. I have the schedule, which you're welcome to look at. I have maps if you want to see how ridiculous the map is. It is.
Can you send that like through our emails or something, or not really?
I scan it.
Oh, you don't have, they didn't send it to you electronically?
I handed it.
I'm sorry, the times again, so we're.
The first one in the assembly is at 9:15. The one in the Senate is at very first and very last day of the
Senate's president.
president.
And going?
I'll go.
Well, yeah.
He is limiting the number of people.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's good to know. Hey, are you going?
I am not going.
Oh.
No. The executive budget, there was a little report from Tim at the meeting about what was in the executive budget. Not that surprising, probably. Library aid was reduced by 3.5 million back to 91.6. And this year, construction aid was reduced by 20 million. Currently, it's 34 million, so of course, hoping that the legislature puts that money back in. The racial equity training that we have done was also being done last month with Valley Falls, East Greenbush, Van Quinn itself and us. And I think I told you already that the library expedition is coming back for a repeat performance in the spring and summer. So hopefully we'll have some more information soon. And there is talk. They're asking Upper Hudson board members to go, and I said, well, what about your own libraries going? So we could all do that.
I have a big
We did
band.
do that with some,
I have a big band.
yeah,
I stand ready.
and that's it.
So I have the old poster on my own store.
I do too.
Okay, excellent. Any questions? Okay, move to new business. So we have the draft 2022-23 library budget, which is on pages 27.
So, this budget, is projecting a levy limit increase of about almost 2%, about 85,000 next year. We don't have anything significantly new or different in the budget. We're still, calculating a 3.5% turnover allowance on salaries, and that seems to be holding really well. Seems to be pretty, pretty accurate. Trying to think what highlight. Let's see.
I mean,
There are no new positions included. There's no significant changes to supplies and services. I will note that accounting services is decreasing by 10,000 because we had that one-time increase this year to upgrade the time clock system. And that was just a one-time thing. And as we're in the process of implementing that now, we won't have that fee for next year. So I was able to drop that cost by 10,000. And if you want to talk about library materials, that's kind of a hard one to.
yeah, I mean, so in fact, we talked a little bit about the materials and they're down year to year, however, they're closer aligned to what we actually spend.
Right.
So,
Right, and we're still at around 12% of overall budget, which Jeff tells me is a really good number for our area.
Yeah.
I did research some other libraries and they were more in the 7 to 8% range, I think it was.
9, 7,
9,
8, 9.
yeah. So I think we're in good shape there, and maybe as we hire new librarians, we'll be able to do more things,
Yes.
purchase more supplies, purchase more library materials, and be able to move forward. And so hopefully, once people get up to speed, we'll see that budget increase. As time goes on. That would be the goal anyways, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has any specific questions.
Goal is to need it. That's the thing that I'm liking, is that we're needing to buy more. Right?
Yes.
Stop that,
Right.
because for a long time, we didn't spend a lot. We didn't spend as much on physical collection because the
People-
circulation wasn't there. Everybody wanted everything electronic. So. Back.
Well, speaking of that, so I noticed that the children's media is down.
Yeah.
Because it's decreased demand, but the amount budgeted for children's books remains the same.
Yeah.
It's because it's stable.
So the other thing is the kids. Kids video is,
Sure, the streams. So you don't need to roll that 3,000 then into book purchases? I mean,
I'm never gonna say no to an increase in a materials budget line. I just, we're basing it on what we're ordering and what we're using in
Okay.
circulation, but it's. Want that to be higher.
But we want to need it.
You want to need it. Yeah, Chris isn't gonna cry.
Right.
Same thing with the audiobooks is down, so you cut from there, but it's like, okay, so.
We have overall book prices been grown too.
A little bit, but it's, this last year was just. Paper supply chain issues and backup author stuff. I'm still not seeing the big spring bounce of books yet. I don't know where the authors all went.
We have to approve this by like next meeting or so?
Next week.
Right, so what I would like to know, is just maybe after, between now and then, is the idea of, is your children's material? But clearly the media stuff is not, is that number that you're asking for no increase?
Yeah.
Is that what you would need to sustain a robust and current collection? That and one other question, that's the only thing I have.
I think, if you look at that line, the children's books.
Yeah.
In 2022, our actual costs for children's books was almost 58,000. We have a budget of 85,000. That would be aspirational that we spend that money, but I don't see how we're gonna spend more than that.
Okay.
Plus your cyclical actual, if it's consistent, you're driving 48,000.
Right.
Okay,
I mean, so,
okay,
That's
the
what
challenge over budgeting character.
Right.
Just,
so let's live up to the aspiration, I guess, because I think understandably, 3/4 of any budget is gonna be personnel, it's the
Yeah,
names of the
right.
beast. And yet when people think of like what's in the library, they think materials, so,
So where we come up with 12, and the reason when Sherry and I talk about this, and Mark and I talk about this, we talk about 12 is the standard. Now, New York State doesn't have a standard. They don't even mention it anywhere. But Pennsylvania has the standard 12% as being the place where libraries should be spending about 12% of their overall budget on materials. And I've worked in libraries where we had that number up at 20. When the number's as high as 20, other things that a library is supposed to be doing are falling off the back of the bus. It seems to be somewhere between 12 and 15, I think is a really good number. So keeping that there, and I think it's both from a public, it's never as much as what the public thinks we do. They think we should be spending 100% of it. But it's, at the same time, there's our industry standard of having that number right in there. So it's, we benchmark it to another state because New York just doesn't have a benchmark like that. But when, Sherry did an investigation of the other local libraries, we're way above that. So, we're like, what's this ideal number? And, as we're watching circulation, that physical circulation, that's why we watch that number so carefully. That's the books. We want to make sure we're not leaving circulations on the table because we didn't have the book that somebody wanted. But at the same time, in the past couple of years, I've seen a stack of James Patterson's not circulating in 2017, every one of them would have been out. So we also don't want to buy books just to feed them into the book sale. That's been a challenge and a real challenge for the last couple of years. So we're getting there.
is there like an ALA standard, like for Pennsylvania has 12%. I think we talked about 15 at one point, but is there like
No,
Illinois has got this or whatever?
the only one I've ever found, I'll do another look.
Seemed like the National Association would say, hey, it seemed like they would have like
Seems like they would.
a range, but
But speaking of the book sale was my other question. So I noticed that this one says 0, but is it the Friends book sale coming in as gifts and donations?
So we used to run a small book sale underneath the stairs where we sold constantly withdrawn, thank you, readed books to the public. Because the Friends actual biannual book sale is fed not through donations, but through our readed books. And it's getting a lot of press and attention and a lot, every time they're doing it, it's not doubling in size, but it's becoming bigger and bigger. We are saving those books for the Friends to sell at the book sale. It's sort of this twice a year bigger event. So we're not selling books.
Sure. So where does that money from that book, the Friends book sale go? Do they funnel it back to us?
Yeah, absolutely. They can't
As a
say,
gift and a donation?
they literally, that's it. So
That's a
that's
good-
the answer.
I guess-
The answer, I could have just said yes.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
right. but it's, they're also saving money. They want to, should we move forward with a capital project? Their goal is to write us a six-figure check for, and they're more than halfway there right now. So they have been saving in some ways, like we've been running the fund balance in the library. The Friends of the Library has been not supporting programs necessarily, well, we haven't needed program in 3 years, 2 years. So they've been saving that with the goal of making a substantial contribution to the library for, hey, they want a something, they want to, well, a name or not, I think they're not gonna die on that hill, they're not gonna die on that hill. But they want to support and they want to be seen as fundraising towards some big thing. Yep. But yes,
Thank you.
gift and donations, I could have just said yes, sorry.
The other question I had was in your, the 81,530 is money we could raise and stay under the tax cap. That's what I look at.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we could increase the total budget by 81,530 and be equal to what the New York State cap is. It's unofficial right now. We haven't gotten the official.
We're just getting
Is it?
some.
We're getting it now. That number's.
Now that we have we were waiting for.
So yes, we have 81,000 that we could spend, could allocate to various
Right.
goals.
Yeah,
if we
okay.
wanted to.
So we could ask the public for it, but we're not.
Yeah. I
Yes,
mean, you don't have to. Yes.
right.
Right. I mean, that's part of
Up
what,
to the cap.
what we need to decide.
I think we should take a look at this carefully. It will be on the agenda for next week. I mean, next month.
Yes, it will.
Would it be helpful to have questions ahead of time? Like if
Yeah.
people have questions, email them for you so that when you're making the presentation, you at least know what's coming.
Sure.
And we'll have to have a voted, approved budget that includes a levy by March, because there's timing issues with getting that to the school district so they can get to their board meeting and get public notice. So it's, unfortunately, we're not in charge of the timing. So I know we don't like to have hard deadlines, but there it is. It's got to be. So.
Okay, great. So moving right along with volunteer policy.
All right, I'm not going to show the volunteer policy that's in the packet. We've emailed everybody and then we distributed version of the volunteer policy. It's not a marked up version that you would usually see a marked up version of a policy. We don't have this policy right now. It's kind of covered haphazardly under some programs, and Chris, as part of our relaunch of our overall volunteer program and hiring of our volunteer coordinator, having a more clearly defined policy about on our practices. So good idea. So
I had one question.
sure.
You talk about on the first page, the library will. Oh, no, I read it. You will, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's a critical for like the participation government students or whatever they call that class now. Whoever is supervising the volunteer reports that directly.
Off the log.
Yeah, well, it can either be the log or sometimes we have an log.
I'm looking for that, make sure.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're not, that would be. No, we're not going to certify.
Right, I
Absolutely.
read this not, I was like.
Yeah. That's an important part of offering.
And also, since this is the new policy and it has a lot of detail in it, and I know we have a long agenda. And the policy committee is just like revving up, and we're gonna be like cranking them out. Another way of going is to have what we call first read and second read. So this is the first read will be at this meeting, and a second read and approval could be the next meeting. So it gives people like additional time. So this is the first time you've seen it, and especially because the revisions just went out this afternoon. If people want more time, you can just say, ask general questions now, and then it goes on for what we call a second read for next month, which is basically last questions, last issues, approval. So it could be like this, it's a full 2 pages worth of text, I think.
I think that's a good suggestion if we have a vote on this at the next board meeting, and thanks very much to the policy committee.
Looks like it's very good work.
And someone else provided us with the initial draft, I'm not sure who. But we were working on, it, someone had written something.
Yeah, we. Chris,
I would
Tracy,
agree.
we put that all together, yeah, that was our.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we got a draft, we worked with that out, we amended it.
Action.
Yep.
So it goes on for old business or so for next time.
All right. So, this is train. They want to, need to install a new compressor on rooftop unit 3. Luckily, I'm not worried about air conditioning right now, but I'm going to be shortly worried about air conditioning. So, we need rooftop unit 3 to have a compressor. It's above my authorization limit. This needs to happen. So, please. Can we authorize train to do this work and replace the compressor?
You need a motion?
This is a contracted amount, right?
This is
It's
a
not
contract,
like
sorry,
we
yes.
we can't get something cheaper. This is. what
We have a
it costs.
contract with them that's part of the New York State contract. That's why it's quoted under New York State contract. We have a multi-year contract with train as well. So
How is this, I hate to say the word or the acronym, is this associated with the HVAC thing?
yes.
Okay, I was just saying, so.
So the rooftop unit is the, sorry, I apologize. The rooftop unit is those big air conditioning heating squares. They have, each of them have 4 compressors in them, which is different than the old units that only had 1. And one of these in rooftop unit 3 has died.
Is it a relatively new?
5 years.
Okay, it's just been talked about so much, I thought it was newer, that's why I
Yeah.
was surprised, okay.
Yeah.
Feels.
It feels newer. And we talked about it a lot. It
Yeah, okay,
grows,
okay,
so
so
that's
it's
just.
it's been going for 5 years and one of them needs to, but okay.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve payment of the training.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. In opposition, that motion is carried. Plaza entry.
Okay, so this is that question that Michelle was asking about earlier. So we you received a public comment about the plaza entry and icing on the plaza. January was everyone was very happy about how January was above 30 most days. I was not happy. That meant in January we had more days of icing on the plaza than I've ever experienced. I'm not expecting that will be different in future years. So we had a lot of icing on the plaza. In any case, I was asked to investigate what would be the possibility of doing some sort of emergency interim mitigation of all those bricks on the plaza. So I reached out to our landscape architects that are part of Ashley McGraw and our landscape architects. It looks like, I don't have the final official word on this, that we could do something out there that would not have to go for SED approval or review, because it's maintenance work and or emergency work, and they would fall out. It's depending on which category that falls into, it either doesn't get reported to them at all, or only would be reported to them in post. It's not something they have to look at or approve at. So we're looking at that. We asked a landscape architect and said, what would we do? What could we possibly do to this that would be relatively simple, that might fix the icing? So what we have is people, our public, know that the brick's ice. And so they walk on the concrete on the side. Like, I got people with walkers that go, oh, I'm gonna go over to the side, and they go up the side of the plaza, and then they go over the grass. It's a nightmare. So in any case, what the landscape architect said was, yeah, what you said, Jeff, let's rip the bricks out and just put a bunch of concrete down. So there's some depth issues. They don't know how deeply they would have to excavate, because the bricks are only this deep. Concrete that freezes less early is deeper than that, which is probably why it freezes less quickly. So working with our landscape architects to try to refine that, make sure it doesn't have to go to SED, and I will try to get some sort of quote so I can give you guys a conceptual price of what something might cost, because I'm not a contracting expert. I don't know if we're talking about something that's going to cost like $7,000 or something that's going to cost $75,000. Literally don't know. As soon as I can get someone to tell me, oh, that's about what I charge you for that, I'll come back and give you that. But
That's great. The other thing you could do is make, I don't know if you rip up enough bricks to make a robust one.
that was the question also to them. So we just reached out just for a first pass to the company Young, who's doing our plowing. We have a relationship with them. We said, would you be willing to stop by? Just give us a quick rough estimate of what it might cost to rip all this brick out and or put an 8-foot strip down the middle of that. And then the question about that is because they're set on a bias that there'd be a lot of brick cutting to make the brick, so that might cost more labor, less materials. But I don't know, so I don't want to tell you information that I don't have. I know nothing about what I'm working on it, and believe me, I'll get it as fast as I can.
And then weigh it against the project that we're gonna be changed based on the building project.
Well, that's
Um,
the question, is do you want to do something? Is it reasonable to do something? Knowing full well, in 2.5 to 3 years, there's gonna be some guy with a skid steer who's gonna rip it up and throw it. That's the harsh reality of this. Is it worth 2 or 3 winters? The maintenance guys would argue strongly that it is, because they have been putting, we went through a whole pallet of ice melt, we don't even use salt anymore. Our blue fancy ice melt, now that's not super expensive, but it's a lot of work, and frequently it just doesn't matter. You keep pouring it on there, it rains, it washes it away, and it refreezes, and it gets weird, and it's bad because our patrons know that. People know to walk on the side. That makes me very upset.
Well, it's kind of like the architect says, it's cost benefit. You say, okay, how much is it worth? Is it
Yes.
worth that much to get X for this amount of time? Sure.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna ask you, because I know that I think you had to close because there was like 4 inches of snow. I was gonna ask you, what do you need in order to keep the library open when there's 4 inches of snow now? Because it's, and I think the public would say, okay, if you close this district, it's 6, 8 inches coming, that's one
Yeah,
thing, but
right.
and it sounded like the maintenance crew was working really hard, it still couldn't keep up. So this question is, what do you need in order to keep the library open when there's some snow, but it's not a blizzard, you know, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm far more worried about the ice than I am about, I would rather have 12 inches of snow than ice.
And I just wanted to remind everyone too, that we do have a line in the budget, contingency in the budget of 35,000 for unforeseen emergencies that we never use.
Exactly.
So.
And that's part of what the fund balance is for too.
Yeah, and capital improvements, I mean,
$100,000 for capital.
No lawsuit's gonna cost us a lot, I agree.
I'm sorry,
A lawsuit's gonna cost us a
Yeah,
lot more
exactly.
money, agreed.
Right.
sell the bricks. Sell the bricks.
I was surprised. I had texted Jeff last Tuesday when I was here, because I came in to get a book. And it was sleeting when I walked in, starting to turn to rain, and by the time I turned back around to go back out, it was like an ice skate.
yeah, and the guys get caught, it's like they one maintenance guy, you do a great job, they're not, like you said, the time it took you to walk in and walk out, it flashed over. And it was 34 or 36
Yeah.
degrees that night, like it makes me. I never see a break again.
There were 3 people walking in, I'm not kidding, that
Yeah.
were literally shuffling. I was like.
Right. Now, the thing is, I mean, ice exists, right? You have an ice storm and everything ices up. That's the world we live. It's the winter in the Northeast, things happen, but it's that it freezes over so much faster on those bricks than on the concrete. I think if guys would just take a bunch of hot patch, throw it over the top of it, asphalt in the whole thing. It's whatever. Anyway, frustration abounds. In any case, that's where we are in the plaza. I'll keep you up to date as quickly as I can as I get more information. We're in process. It said, well, it's nice that we have a landscape architect that I have on the phone that I can talk to and check on whether, I don't know whether that goes to SE or not. Not everything does. It doesn't involve life safety. Okay. Moving on.
Other new business. Okay, old business, notary service.
Okay. Catching my yet other mistake on here, I appreciate that. So in any case, this is the sort of revamped, slimmed down version of what we do. I looked at the folks who had signed up and were interested in notary services, brought it down to 11. I think that would provide a decent amount of coverage. I'm not going to guarantee every weekend or every night, but it provides a decent amount of coverage. We prioritize the people who are here nights and weekends, which is a lot of part-time people. Luckily, our part-time pretty stable, and some of them are also very enthusiastic about this. So the thing I need actually from tonight is we can continue this discussion, but Upper Hudson is signing up people for a class for notary and has agreed to pay for the class and agreed to pay for the certification cost, the test cost for every successful person who served. So that window is closing. But I asked the question to now, they've had the class, they've got it signed up, they're doing signups right now. So I'd like to direct people to take that, even if they become successful notaries, but we never authorize them to provide notary services.
Yeah,
It doesn't, we're not out anything.
So do you need a motion? Do you need action on this?
I don't, just, I need to tell you that's what we're doing, and if that sounds like consensus, that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so we're gonna do that. And then, these are my estimated costs of, ongoing annual costs are bottom part. One-time costs are on the top part, mostly related to attorney's fees, and again, that's a little bit of a guess on my part. Maybe it's less than that. And, because we cut down to 11 people, the $800 for notary stamps would actually be $440 to provide this, so a little bit more modest. And then about $1,700 or $1,800 a year ongoing to provide that.
Okay.
Good, okay,
Good.
moving on, there we go.
Okay. We have here donations in the neighborhood.
Yep, I'll just keep that up there. We're at the point, I mean, last month, so I sent out sort of valuation of the other local libraries and what their naming rights are. I think the question might be more, if we don't want to do it this time, that's okay too, but we have to deal with it at some point. The question is this something that we're interested in as a library and board, or is this something we're not interested? Because it seems like if we're going to do it, we ought to have a well-crafted policy to do that, but that's almost downstream from the question. We don't need to write a policy if the answer is. So.
Wasn't there also a timing issue?
Why do we have to
Because,
get back to that guy?
well, I mean, there's that, but there's also, we're not gonna name a room that we're gonna knock down after someone. So I mean, this would be entirely future looking, correct? This, okay.
Right, it's all future
I
looking.
think it's important,
Yeah.
to reiterate that when we met with Sport, she suggested in his mind, he would like his grandchildren to be able to come see something that said, hey, you know, we thought this was important and this is why we donated to the library. So couldn't that be in the form of a plaque that could be moved at any time, whether the room is taken down or not?
Sure, yeah.
And two, just to follow up with the question I had emailed you before, it sounds like as a board, we can make a decision on that without a policy.
You can.
But then you run into a case by case basis, and is it better to have a policy?
Yeah, so I agree, Michelle, you're right. Less important getting, like that policy is gonna have, you know, if there's a policy, it's gonna have a lot of details in it. You're gonna talk about all of the really good ideas that were mentioned here about, you know, who, what's the vetting, how long, is it perpetuity? There's a lot of good questions there. The Joe's question back upstream is this a thing, he asked us, is this a thing we want to allow? We don't have, you know, but it is one to think about.
I appreciate like all of the, you know, giving a lot of money and assets, but it just, the timing of this just seems very, very bad. In that, you know, to your point, yes, we could have a plaque and do that. I don't sense that that is exactly what he's looking at for, or what a naming policy is, but it just seems like, I think we could agree that we're not, I think, you know, category 3 is, are we gonna do it? Are we not gonna do it? Or we make a commitment to do it as part of a future project or as part of a bigger initiative, because it just, the timing is just.
Fair enough. I mean, it might be an opportune time to think about it if we're going into a construction project, or as we know a little bit more, it might be.
Yes, but to say that we're not gonna name anything, or we can create a policy tomorrow, but we will not implement that policy or offer that policy up until a future date.
Well, yeah, yes, and what's the name? I wanna give money to the computers. But there's always public availability of computers here.
There's
The best thing.
So we don't have a living room, right? We have, like tables, tables and pieces of furniture and, you know.
Stuff we're still gonna have in the new place.
We can stick a name on anything.
Right, and we do, and that's, I mean, that's covered under our current policy, like a lot of the smaller stuff. But when we have a donor who's given a larger amount of money and says, I'd like to name her, what's the possibility of that? That was the question that was.
And my opinion is, we should definitely have a naming, we should do that. And we should figure out a policy, the timing of that, like whether we say, yes, we'd like to name a room, fine. Hold on, we're about to do the project, you know, let's talk to you about the new rooms. Or the, you know, rooms that are gonna be renovated there now. I mean, you're right, don't name a room that you're gonna blow up and make nicer or whatever.
It also, I mean, it also seems like an opportunity to create hate to use the word buzz, but
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
but to create buzz around, okay, where we can say, okay, we have this bond, whatever the bond is.
Yes.
Assume we have it approved, we have it approved. Guys, we're moving forward, we have adapted this policy. If you would like to be a part of it, here it is.
Now's the time.
Yeah.
Like, right.
Sure. I have to admit, I've been really reluctant on the whole idea. And after looking at some of the sample policies, I would be willing to say,
Such as they are.
go to the policy committee. Because I think with guidance, some of my discomfort, because you'll see the numbers on some of those policies.
Yeah.
You want a room? It's not what is coming in now.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, so I think with guidance and lots of discussion and input, I could see that there is a place for a naming, but I don't feel like I need to move because someone says, I want to name a room and I want to name it in perpetuity. And it's like, yeah, so I want us to be clear that as if there's enough of the board members that go forward, I would say it goes to the policy committee and we start getting more input from the board. What are your visions? What are stipulations you want to see? And then over time, hopefully not 2.5 to 3 years, we come up with a policy and then we figure out how it interfaces with any building projects that are underway or down the road.
I think your question is right, Jeff. If we're definitely a no.
Yeah.
Then
It's easy.
forget it. It's easy. So I'm not hearing that anyone's a no. But please let me know.
I would say that I'm on the same fence. I don't know that I'm convinced at this point.
Okay.
But I'm open to hearing people's thoughts. You know?
But I think you're right. I mean, I think it's one of the key parts of that dialogue would be setting what. I'm gonna donate $50 million to the library and name the community room after the library. I'm imagining it's a different discussion, right? And that so that dialogue of like, what would we expect from something like community room,
Yeah.
the boardroom,
Yeah.
meeting
Story room.
space, yeah, all those things. What kind of dollars are imagined that comes from the library. That's so.
And it doesn't go saying, we're not talking about rooms, we're talking about a big plaque. You know, and so it moves us along. Is there a way of recognizing things? And then the trustees give input and the policy committee runs with that and we go back and forth. And then we decide what is the place, manner and whatever.
Time, manner, place.
Yeah, something like that, basically, yeah. Those areas.
Okay, good.
So I'm getting more comfortable with it, but I think it's not so much like, okay, we're working one situation and we've decided that it goes right here. It's more like, let's continue to work as a group to see what we might want. That's what I'm comfortable with. I'm not sure what other people are.
Well, are you suggesting that we continue to discuss it as a full board, or are you saying it should go into policy committee to come up with an example policy?
Well, I think there's a couple of people from the policy committee, but for me, I'd rather get some more input, like what are your general ideas? What are you looking for? If people want to give that, or we could just kind of hash something out. But I think a good policy might be giving some idea of what people's thoughts are, but I don't know what I'm looking at, like I said, Mark, we're on the committee with me. As opposed to just like making something up. I mean, it's like, what's important, you're talking about,
I think also what you're saying is that you don't want to create a policy. Grateful as we are for one family support.
Right.
We don't want to create a policy to accommodate one family or one request. And not that that's what we would do, but if we were to just immediately come up with something, it would be hard not to be hard not to work within that context.
Right, and the other question and the only reason I bring it up is it's been years since I've never had anybody mention. A lot of people talk about table, but a lot of people talk about, so many people talking about benches. Right, so 1,000 benches. We did have just someone make a donation for a picnic table. Great, love picnic tables. Movable, wonderful. But the Friends of the Library also have this. They wanna make a major donation, and like I said, it's not gonna. Their donation isn't gonna hinge on the fact of whether they get to put their name on it. But a lot of friends do put a name on the thing, and the question is, it came up twice in sort of a short time frame, so it's not out of left field.
I'm not so sure we made forward movement.
We didn't.
Well, and I
Oh,
would
yeah, I
say
think we did.
the information that Jeff had gotten in the formal survey really proves that there's no real guidance.
Yeah.
In terms of,
Poughkeepsie was the interesting one. They got $7 or $10 million. They were the basically the only beneficiary of this estate. And it's like, we don't have policies there.
Well, I don't want to put more work on the policy committee, but to me, it seems like we know we have a building situation coming up where people might want to give large amounts of money, where we might need to field more questions about it. So to me, it seems like policy committee should sit down and draft a policy with information that we have and then bring it back to us so that sometime in the next like 6 months to a year, by the time the other project comes around, that we have a policy.
Why don't we put it, make it, I agree with you, why don't we make, not to make one. For the policy committee, certainly ad hoc help with this one. For the fall, what do we say within the, it is 6 months, in the next 6 months.
Yeah, because we have
that we have.
uncovered a backlog of policies that really need to be
Yeah.
that are already on the books and then are way overdue to, so maybe we'll have to figure it out. Yeah. The Sonoma County Library, where did that come from? Did I get that? Jim gave me that. I don't know where.
It's California.
No, did you, how did I get it? Did everybody else have it?
Maybe Mark did. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's, I don't know, if did everyone get this? Yeah, it might be good to get, that's where I got the numbers from. I
Okay.
said, yeah,
I did some quick research, Google research.
Yeah. so
There's
if,
definitely policies out there, and there's also like non-library.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
A lot of.
so if everyone didn't get the Sonoma ones, I would give, can you just make a note to give everyone the Sonoma policy? Sonoma policy, I think and if you can't find it, then maybe Mark, whoever got it, could just, I'll find it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, negotiations.
Just, the union has had their second meeting and they're interested. I'll reach out from, Charles from CSEA. He's interested in getting ready to start negotiations. So, I have sent the contact information for our negotiation attorneys. I believe there's conversations going on in the back channel conversation about getting that scheduled. So forward progress on that front. Oh, yeah.
But it does have implications for the budget, correct? Because anything that goes in the contract is gonna be reflected in the budget, correct?
Right.
Well, it's,
Just in general terms, I'm saying.
it'll be, I mean, there'll be money that'll be spent and we'll have to recognize it in what actually gets spent, but the
Yes.
budget is likely very extremely. Almost impossible that the budget is, we're gonna set the budget,
Yeah.
the proposed budget to the public in March.
Yeah.
There is essentially no chance that any of that is gonna be recognized ahead of time in the budget.
Right.
It will impact the budget.
Right, they're linked is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
okay. Got it.
Right, other old business. Any future business? Okay, public participation. Nothing? Okay, we need to adjourn to executive session.
So what I'm looking for,
Sorry, let's take some of.
looking for a board, a motion to enter, the executive session for the purposes of discussing contract negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law.
So.
All those in favor, signify by raising your hand, okay? Any more opposition, motion carried, we move to executive session.
Say so. Whatever he said. The one is, the board made this outside, there's some, already said.
Yeah, so.
I'm just standing up because I, my ring.
Oh, yeah, I guess I might.